thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf, and today I'm filming my wrap up for the month of June, which is a little bit belated because it's now over halfway through July, but such is life. It's absolutely boiling, so we're in the middle of a heat wave here, and today it's like 29 degrees, but next week it's going to be like 36, which I don't think I've ever lived through such a high temperature as it is at 36. I don't think so. It's very humid, so I'm like also the kids are playing right outside this room, so you'll probably hear, I'm sure the microphone will pick them up. They're building walls of teddy bears, so okay, so let's walk. So in the month of June I read 10 books. So we'll just kick off in order that I read them. So the first book was an audio book, and that was What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is quite a short non-fiction. It's a memoir about his writing mixed in with his running as well. So he's a person who runs, I think, 6 days a week, or he certainly was when he wrote the book, which is a few years old now, but he was running 6 days a week. He's done lots of marathons. He ran a marathon in Greece when it was like blistering heat, which I don't know how he did that. I tried running when it was too hot the other morning, and I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. So I'm not really sure how he ran a marathon in that heat. But anyhow, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It was my first Haruki Murakami. I'd really like to read some of his novels because I hear them favourably talked about all the time. And it was just nice to hear about his kind of discipline with running and how he became a writer, what his writing routine is like, and I really just thought it was a really nice memoir. Then I read the book, this feels like such a long time ago, I read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This was the book that won my book scavenger hunt when I did that video a month and a half ago probably now, and this was the book that came out on top. This is one of the books I've had on my TBR for the longest. I've had this for absolutely ages. I'd already watched the film. I did actually really enjoy this. It's not the best writing in the world, but I wasn't expecting it to be, and it deals with the issue of so let me start again. The 2 characters are, there's Lou, who has lost her job and she's looking for work, and she gets a role as a carer. And then there's, what's his name? Will. So Will was in an accident and he became paralysed from, is it the neck down? I don't think he has use of his hands, but maybe I can't remember. But anyway, so he is a wheelchair user, and he has a physio who does the sort of medical things, and Lou is there to sort of try and lift his spirits because he's quite depressed, also to be company for him, which she later finds out was because he wants to go to Dignitas and his family want her to be with him to ensure that he doesn't try and kill himself. This deals with a lot of topics, but the thing that I found really hard was that Will wants to die, and I found it uncomfortable because I didn't want the message of this book to be that people who have Will's disability or people who are wheelchair users, that their lives aren't worth living for them. And I really struggled with that as a concept, because it's just, you can't, I mean, yes, it must be extremely hard. I just feel like it's a difficult message. So I did really enjoy the actual story, but I just was uncomfortable with the theme. And there is 2 books, I think, after this, so I might read them, we'll see. The next book I read was incredible, and it was A Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I feel like I haven't hardly seen anyone talking about this or reviewing this on BookTube. Maybe it's just the people that I watch on BookTube, I don't know. But I read Normal People and Conversations with Friends, and I was not as wowed by them as everyone else in the world seemed to be. But I still picked this up just because you sort of feel like you have to read the new Sally Rooney books when they come out. And I loved this one. I gave this 5 stars. This was a great book, and it's made me want to go back and read the other Sally Rooney's again to see if my opinions change. So the premise of this book, it's about two pairs of people, so 2 men and 2 women. So the women are called Alice and Eileen, and the men are Felix and Simon, so I'm terrible at remembering names. So Eileen is a successful writer, and I'm sure that Sally Rooney has inserted parts of her life into Eileen's life. Eileen is somebody who just wants to write. She doesn't want fame. She's highly paid, but she doesn't kind of live a life of, you know, wealth or indulgence or anything. And she meets Felix, who is this kind of random guy who isn't the nicest guy, but they really click, and it's about kind of their relationship as one couple. And then the other couple is Eileen, who is working in a really low paid job in publishing. She's been friends with Alice for a long time, and they write to each other. And then also Simon, who is a friend of both of theirs, but he's been friends with Eileen since childhood, and about their kind of relationship with each other as well. And I thought, like, nobody writes dialogue like Sally Rooney. Like, her dialogue is absolutely spot on. Like, the conversations are just amazing. Like, I think dialogue is super hard to write in books, and she just does it. Like, you can absolutely imagine it just being turned straight into a script because the dialogue is so real and so good. And I just found this just a brilliant book. So far, one of my books of the year so far. The characters in this are older than the characters in the other books, and I don't know if that's why I resonated with this one more. I would say they're in their 30s, early 30s, late 20s, whereas the other books are kind of 10 years younger. So that might be why, but loved. And I've loved the adaptations of Conversation with Friends and Normal People on TV, so I hope that they add up to this one as well. The next one I read is going to be really hard to describe, and that's This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This is a science fiction book, and this is quite a small book, and I bought this one because I heard Jean Renzi's talk about it, and this is really hard. It's like a sapphic love story, so it's set in a post-apocalyptic kind of world, but the people in the world can time travel, and they can pick like threads of time and knot them and move them and things like that to alter things, and they can travel down different threads and things, so it's quite a complex kind of premise. And there's Red and Blue, who are enemies, but they actually, like, they're both women, and they both actually really admire each other and their skill in the work that they're doing, and they end up leaving these hidden messages for each other, and they're hidden over like years. They're incredibly like cleverly hidden in seeds, and you have to eat the seeds to get the message, or different things like that. And they have to hide them because if anyone finds out they're talking to each other, then they'll both be killed. So it's kind of like a science fiction love story with complex time travel, and it's not a straightforward, easy to read book. You don't kind of get everything, but I don't feel like it's not gonna spoil it if you don't quite understand like the rules of time travel and stuff. But yeah, I thought it was good, and I gave that 3.5 stars. Then from the library, so I got this next book out from the library, but then I ended up listening to it on Audible or Libby, I can't remember. I think Libby, which is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper, and this is so far I think my favourite read of the year. So we are following Amara. It's set in Pompeii, so it's set obviously in ancient times, and Amara and the other women that she lives with who are also slaves. So Amara was from a wealthy family. Her dad was educated he was a doctor. She was brought up to be educated and cultured and things, and when her dad died, her mum ran out of money and sold her, and she was sold as like a concubine, but then she became a slave. And there's other women who she lives with who have been stolen and illegally trafficked and things, and they are all like sex workers against their will. And the guy who runs the brothel is called Felix, and Amara is quite clever, and she's trying to gain favour with Felix, who she also hates. She's trying to make money. She's trying to better herself. She's trying to escape from being a slave. And this is her story. I obviously don't want to tell you what happens. I don't want any spoilers. But what I would say is this book is obviously like massive trigger warnings for sexual violence, sexual assault and stuff like that. But it's done in a way that's not gratuitous, in my opinion. It's very evocative. So you can smell Pompeii, you can taste the food, you can feel the heat, you can hear the music, you can see the entertainment. You get a real sense of what Pompeii was like at that time. And I thought it was like an incredible book. And the second is I think it's gonna be a trilogy. The second one has just come out and I can't wait to listen to the second one. It's done by the same narrator, but I'd really like to own the series as well and put them on my shelf because it's just brilliant. Then I read, so next one was a real disappointment, I'm afraid, and this was The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. I know that a lot of people really adored this book, but I just didn't, I'm afraid. So this was shortlisted for the Women's Prize this year, and it's set over 2 time periods, so present day London and also Cyprus in just before the Second World War, I think. It follows Kostas and Daphne. So Kostas is Greek Cypriot, Daphne is Turkish Cypriot. It's in the time of the Greek Cypriot, Turkish Cypriot Civil War. I didn't know anything about this, so one thing I would say is that I now know a lot more about the Civil War than I did before. I didn't really know anything about the history of Cyprus. And it's about like a gal who's a descendant of this couple, like learning about the history. And it's the reason I didn't particularly like it is a lot of the book is narrated by a fig tree. So a fig tree was growing in a tavern where Daphne and Kostas used to meet, and it was a place of safety for them. And the part of the fig tree has been brought to the garden in London, and the fig tree narrates quite a lot of the book, and I didn't like the bits the fig tree narrated. I would have much preferred if those sections weren't in there. I understand like the metaphor of the fig tree for being uprooted and replanted and getting used to new surroundings and everything like that, but it wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I just didn't like the sections narrated by the fig tree. I didn't find that I fell in love with the characters, and I was just really disappointed because everybody loved this book, and I only ended up giving it, I gave it 3 stars, but I think I'd probably go down to 2.5 now. So that was a shame. Then I listened to a romance book which was called Seatmate by Cara Bastone, and this was one of the free books on Audible Plus. I'd really recommend this. So there's 3 by Cara Bastone. I definitely want to listen to all 3. They're not related to each other. And this is basically, it's as if you're watching a film, but without the picture, because it's like you can hear sound effects, you can hear like traffic, you can, like the characters are done by different narrators, and it doesn't say like he said, she said, whatever. It just kind of, it's just acted out. And it was really enjoyable. So I can't remember the characters' names because I'm terrible at remembering names. Let's just call them the male and female lead. So the female lead is she's a successful blogger, and she is on a bus journey to interview a woman who is kind of quite a reclusive ex-socialite, and this is a really big deal for her. She really looks up to this woman. And then there's a guy who is a regular on this coach, which is a several-hour coach journey that he does to go and visit his mum. And it's basically just they end up sitting next to each other on the bus, and it's a conversation with them in real time on the bus, as they get to know each other. We get to know each other's stories, and then we do get a little bit of what happens afterwards. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was very easy to listen to. The narration was really good. I really liked how it was done for Audible. The story was engaging, and I just found this really, really enjoyable. So if you're looking for a romance which isn't too long and which is really readable and well written and fun, then I would really recommend this book. And I gave that one 4.5 stars. The next one I read was another Audible. This was a non-fiction. This is What White People Can Do Next by Emma Dabiri. This was my first Emma Dabiri, and it will not be my last because this was a phenomenal non-fiction book. So the subtitle of this book is From Allyship to Coalition, and I thought this was absolutely incredible. So Emma Dabiri is like an academic and a scholar as well as a writer, and her studies are in her academic qualifications, I think, are in African studies, and she can write. She's a really good writer. She narrates the audiobook herself, and she just talks about, she's got a different narrative to other writers who I've read their books about race and how to make progress and how to move things forwards. And she comes up with, for me, new ideas. How she writes this is really incredible. So her whole premise is to stop racializing everybody, to look at people as who they are rather than their race, to go from allyship she sees as an act of where white people basically are kind of like an act of charity towards black people, saying like, oh, we'll help you, like we'll, and actually it shouldn't be like that. A coalition, it should be everybody like working together as equals, not one group helping another group by implying that one group is higher than the other, if you see what I mean. I don't mean to say this in any offensive terms whatsoever, because I totally understand and appreciate like how she sort of defined what allyship is, and she defined what coalition is and why we should be using coalition as working together. She talks so much about guilt and about definitions and about, gosh, just trying to remember. The list of I can't read out the list of the chapters because I'm recording on my phone and they're on my phone, but she talks about so many things, and it's really interesting because she talks about how much of the stuff in the media was just repeating the same phrases and the same symbolism without action behind it and without actually thinking, how does this help and what does this mean? Like, she just said, like, putting a black square as your Instagram post, that's fine, but like that doesn't actually mean anything. That doesn't change anything. It doesn't help in any way. And she's sort of saying like, what's your motive behind doing things like that? She also just examines ideas and says, like, for instance, she says, if you ask somebody to give up their privilege and give it to another person, she's like, why would they do that? Like, what's their motivation to do that? So we shouldn't be stripping privilege from some people and giving it to other people. We should be looking at people of all races who have no privilege or who have less privilege, and by coalition working together to change that. So makes so much sense. Like, everything she writes just makes so much sense. It really kind of clicked and resonated with me. I found that she was just questioning things which people just go along with, and people say, oh yeah, we should do this and we should do this, and she's like, but why does that make sense? Why should you do that when wouldn't it make more sense to do it this way? And she very much talks about, like, there's lots of people who have no privilege, there's lots of groups of people. She talks a lot about poverty and things like that, and she says, like, we don't need to make this all about race. We need to or like, I'm probably explaining this really badly. What I would say is this is a short book. I would love to have a paper copy so that I can go through, read it and highlight and tab, because it's an absolute masterpiece in my opinion, and I loved it. It was a 5-star read. It's definitely one of my books of the year. I'm going to stop trying to explain what it's about, but just go and read it because it's wonderful. The second to last book that I have is Loveless by Alice Oseman. So this was on my 5-star predictions list. I'm trying to read at least one of these a month, and I was a tiny bit disappointed with this. I'm so sorry to say. I really, really wanted to love this because I love Heartstopper so much, and this is a book with an asexual, aromantic main character. So Georgia is going off to university. She has never had even her first kiss before. She feels like she really should do this, but the idea of kissing someone like physically repulses her. She thinks it's really disgusting. She has no interest. She's never had a crush on anyone, and she just isn't interested in romance or sex at all. And she feels like she's really abnormal for this. And when she sort of tries to force herself, and then she just can't do it. And then when she gets to university, it's all about her exploring her friendships. And she lives with, she has a roommate who is very much into, she's very sex positive, her roommate. And so they kind of help each other, I would say. And it's all about her other friends who, her best friend is a lesbian. There's a guy who was also really good friends with them, and so Georgia doesn't know the terms asexual or romantic. She just thinks that she's weird, and people keep saying to her, oh, don't worry, you'll meet the right person eventually, like, of course you won't be on your own forever, like, this is just a phase and you'll meet the right person. And she just wants to say, I really don't want to meet anybody, this is not for me. But nobody will really listen to her. And then she sort of, through the community at the university, she understands, through the sort of LGBTQ plus community, she understands what those definitions are, and that she is asexual aromantic, and feels like, oh my gosh, someone gets me. So the premise is wonderful. I think for me it was probably just I'm a bit too old for it maybe, and also I found it pretty repetitive. Georgia made the same arguments a lot of times, and I just found that was a bit boring. I think that if you are especially a young person who feels the same as Georgia, I think this book would be so wonderful for you, because I think you'd feel seen and heard. And I think it's probably good for people to understand about what asexuality is like, because I'm not asexual or aromantic, and so I don't really know what it's like to stand in those shoes. And I think this helped me to understand that, but I was just probably a little bit too old, I think, for this book. So I still gave it, I gave it 3.5 stars, but it wasn't a 5-star like I predicted. And then the final book that I read was one for book club, and it was called The Silent Daughter by Emma Christie. It was a crime book about a woman who, she's in her 50s, she's married. She goes out to do a 10k race, and then her husband gets a call to say she didn't run the race. She's in a coma. She fell down some steps and had a head injury, and the steps weren't near where she should have been for the run. So that's one mystery. The other mystery is that they have 2 children, a son and a daughter. The daughter is traveling around the world. She's like a tour guide, but she's been AWOL for quite a few months, and they can't contact her to try and tell her about her mum, and the son's just a bit useless. And it's basically a mystery about why can't they contact the daughter, what happened to the mum. I really can't say anything more, because if I do, then it will spoil it. I'm not really into this kind of book. It was a 3-star read for me. There was definitely some problematic themes in the book for me, but if I tell you what they are, then it's going to give away a massive spoiler. I didn't guess the spoiler, but some of the people in the book group did. I don't really have too much more to say about it. I gave it 3 stars. It was fine, but it just wasn't going to set the world alight for me, or for anybody, to be honest. So that's all the books that I read. This is quite a long wrap up, I apologise, but that's all the books that I read in June. If you have any thoughts on the books, if you read any of them, if you want to read any of them, let me know. If you have any similar recommendations that you want to tell me about, that'd be great. Or just tell me what you're reading at the moment. I always love getting comments, and I reply to all my comments. And I hope you're enjoying your week wherever you are. I hope you're not melting in the weather, and I will see you all soon. Bye.